One of the main things that's very important is the part that you were mentioning when you were saying about how, this is a war document. When
Hmm.
you're under war, the way things work as far as the government is very different, right? When you're in war, the Constitution is suspended, and therefore it becomes subject of the war, meaning the president has the ability to now not be president, but he's actually five-star general commander in chief. He's in charge of all the armed forces. He's in charge of every single avenue of anything dealing with the territories that America would encompass under his federal jurisdiction. So this is why, if you look up the war powers, you'll see that Abraham Lincoln was like a Caesar. Whatever he was to say was to become law, because the fact that we were fighting an enemy that was domestic. We weren't fighting an international enemy under international law. We were fighting domestic enemies under the form of a rebellious group of people called the Confederates, who went against the Union to go ahead and therefore formed armed rebellion and armed insurrection again to overtake and overthrow the Constitution.
There's something that I saw was that there were a number of people who are within our government that are also descendants of slave owners or enslavers. Would you say that reparations is owed from them, from their families as well?
And this is why I think leaving it where Special Field Orders 15 is the foundation makes it where it's inarguable, right? If I
Hmm.
was to go after each and every one's family, then an argument can be made that that was a private contract or private property, and therefore they're not brought into the jurisdiction of the federal government to be owed anything. This is me playing devil's advocate, right? I
Hmm.
could then make the argument to say that there's no there's the statute of limitations or the statutes of power does not grant the federal government tell me what to do with my property. So this is why you need things like President Proclamation Order Number 95, commonly known as Emancipation Proclamation. You need these documents to say that there's a legal standing for this property to now be shifted into non-property status. You can't just
Hmm.
take a person's property without giving what you have to give equal or greater compensation or fulfillment of contract, which is why the conversation about going after families is kind of something where we're talking about is not really what we're not in the framework of that. We're owed from the federal government, so we're not trying to go to the president who might be a ex-slave owner or the congressman, because at the end of the day, the only thing we really can hold over them is to say that they may be skewed or biased in their decision making as descendants of of those who enslaved us, meaning they might not support reparations. They might not be for our advantageous help because they were from a generation of people who probably were against us being free and against us having economic opportunities. So we wouldn't really be advantageous going after families as much as it would be going after the federal government documents that they promised to us as a people and not just to each individual as a family.
Also, I want to share this as well. Post-abolition inequalities. This isn't just limited to chattel slavery, but it's also post, you go to the Reconstruction, Jim Crow era. And so this says, whereas following the abolition of slavery, the American government at the federal level continued to perpetuate, condone, and often profit from practices that continue to disadvantage Negroes. These practices included sharecropping, convict leasing, black codes, Jim Crow laws, organized riots, unequal education, unequal access to power, mass incarceration, and unequal access to global civic programs and agendas. Civic organizations were able to operate while openly discriminating against Negroes and still have a non-tax exempt status and disproportionate treatment at the hands of the criminal justice system. This is whereas the median wealth of the white household is 2 times that of Negroes and their descendants. This form divide and conquer has been strategically implemented by dominant groups to keep this oppressive power structure running exactly how it's designed to run, to reassure that those in power today will stay in power tomorrow. Whereas restitution for Negroes and their descendants in the United States is estimated at least 15 trillion in cash payments, endowments, and annuities, trust accounts, or other investments that will improve the well-being of the Negroes and their descendants who were harmed. So you're also tackling the inequality that has also been happening post chattel slavery. So when it comes to the amount that is calculated, because if I remember correctly, Dr. Sandy Darity in his book From Here to Equality, I think he estimated about 11 trillion. I think was it that? If you guys don't mind correcting me.
One thing I know Dr. Darity says is that's just a base. Like that's
That's
the
the
lowest
base.
estimate. That's like the low. I think he said it's
Yeah, minimum.
23 trillion. If anything,
Minimum.
I think he said more recently 23 trillion. But he also
23.
always throws the caveat and says that that's the bare minimum. That's the base. Newsweek had it at 151 million a piece. Send it. That's the value that their economists did, and they actually made that publication, I believe, in 2022. I'll try to put that in the chat so you can see that as well.
If I could jump in real quick, California just proved that a state cannot do this. I don't care how big your economy in that state is, California, all that stuff. It don't matter. This is not something that a state can pay. This is a federal harm that can only be repaired by a federal action. I really wanted to make that clear. All these state reparation task force and all, that's a grift. That is literally people wanting to make money. Anyone that stands against lineage-based for special field orders, they're standing against true repair. There is no kind of half-stepping when it comes to that. It's either you are seeing the truth in this or you're not. And that's kind of the scary part about it, because the reality is coming. This document alone is straight proof of harms literally that our government sanctioned and that they're trying to wash over today. Like I said, they tried to take the word Negro out of the lexicon for a reason. They are trying to erase our people, you know, just like what's happening right now in Chicago. Mark Carter is out there doing amazing work in Chicago, pushing back on the immigration situation that's happening and just kind of trampling over our people in already bad situations, and then adding more people to vote. That's erasing us even more. That's putting the lower class below the lower class. So how do you do that and then expect us not to see the reality in you erasing our people right before our eyes? So that's another harm that is happening post all of this stuff that's happened before, but now they're making us, they're trying to make, because we see the play and we see what they're doing. We're seeing that they're, you know, bringing people here. And I'm not saying I'm against oppression anywhere. I don't care who it is or what it's about. If we're American first, and we need to focus on American issues without giving all these other debts that have been owed need to be paid, definitely, before we're just handing out money and giving checks to anyone that comes here. But we need to draw attention to all of these harms and push forward with the truth, which we're trying to stand in.